Hi.
Hello.
Hello, hello. So, welcome back to our training module 4. Today we are going into the topic of birth. That's a very interesting topic, and it has to do with birth, mother and child. That's what it's all about, the mother and child relationship, which plays a vital role in our lives, of course, but also in family constellation, as you know. That's the most important relationship we have to look at and heal and work a lot with. It's normally not done with just one constellation and everything is good. The mother connection can be seen often when you work with line with yourself, and with line comes up all the time, and that's okay. It's not meant that the first time hasn't worked or something like that. It's just that it plays such a deep role and it has so many aspects that every time you look at your mother relationship, you find something else, something new. So okay, that having said, we go into part 2 and I share the screen with you. That the charts that I have for you today. And that would be, we're talking about trauma. Uh, we are talking about birth energies. We are talking about the movement towards the mother. Okay, so what exactly are we looking at? We are looking at how to release a trauma, right? And with what methods and modalities we have for that. We are looking at what birth energies are. We are looking at the process of birth from a spiritual perspective. We are looking at the rebirthing and how we conduct that. We are looking at the interrupted movement towards the mother in a family constellation in greater detail. And that's what we do for today. And that's actually a full program. So let's start with trauma release. We have commonly, we work with childhood traumas. We would commonly work with family traumas in the family system. When we are working with traumas, we are also working with the subconscious mind. So we have to have a look at it and how that works. And we have to look at a particular emotion that is connected with trauma, and that is guilt. Okay, let's go into childhood trauma. Emotional, oh, it's not coming up. Hang on, here we go. Emotional trauma occurs when one's ability to walk away from a situation is taken away through physical or psychological force, right? That means the freedom to make choices is taken away and the emotion of guilt or shame is present. That is what's forming in emotional trauma. So there's an impact, a violation, right? And there is an emotion. That is guilt or shame. Just an impact, just like if it was a car accident, I mean, it can be traumatic, but that's not what we're talking about, right? Don't get me wrong. The emotional traumas we are talking about are the ones that are stored in the soul, that goes on a soul journey. And typically, an accident, like let's say there is a car accident, and a child is in the car, and it's an accident, and there's might be, let's say it's very sudden, and there's not even time for fear, right? So it's really just an impact without an emotion. Um, this child will not have a trauma from this. Yeah. It will be just something that has happened that the child might never remembers. Hmm? But if like this accident was foreseeable, like let's say the father was drunk and the mother was already nervous, and already the child picking up in the car something's going to happen and she's going to be fearful, and then the car accident happens. Now it has a deeper impact because this impact is coupled with an emotion fear. However, this is not necessarily stored in the soul and goes on a journey. But if the child is in the car doing something naughty, yeah, and the father wants to lash out to the child, and then the accident occurs. Now the child thinks it is guilty, that the accident has happened. And this is, remember the vibration of energies? This is such a low vibrating energy that it is forming a trauma for the soul. Yeah. So guilt and shame are the lowest emotions, lowest frequency of it. They are so low, they are vibrating so low that nobody can live with it. So they come in the disguise, right, of anger often. So always look deeper when you're dealing with emotions like anger or grief, if there is not an underlying or a camouflaged emotion of guilt or shame. Because really nobody can live with such a low vibration. And this is all hidden. And most often in the subconscious mind. And this is why it forms a trauma that is stored in the emotional body. Because it is never released, it's never seen at, it's never looked at. Has a very deep impact on the soul, and becomes also, if it's not dealt with, a family trauma, right, for later generations. So, and then we see it in the family constellation, in a former generation, 1, 2, 3 generations before. But it doesn't need to be an accident. It can also be an act of violence, an abuse situation. But it has to be coupled, it has to be related to the emotion of guilt or shame. So emotional trauma happens in childhood, when the child normally cannot walk away from the situation, especially if the adult who is opposing the act of violence on the child is an authority, which for a child every adult is an authority basically. And of course, more drastically when it's the parents or a close relative or something like that, right? The child doesn't feel, they can walk away. They feel helpless. They need to be in alpha state. That means they are exposed to suggestions. Alpha state is a normal state for a child up to, definitely 3 years old. Then it kind of laps over 5 years still, up to 5 years, some up to 7 years. But more often, these childhood traumas we are discovering are up to 5 years for a child. That doesn't mean it couldn't be 6 or 7, but mainly 5. So when a client in a regression doesn't know how old they are when they go to a childhood trauma, then you can ask them if, you can suggest to them to see themselves as 5-year-olds. Because they normally would be able to see then the event. So in this alpha state, the children are just soaking in information, and there is no information is good or bad, or they have no means of um, judging this information. It's just soaked in. So suggestions are, especially from close family members, mother, father, grandfather, grandmother, uncle or auntie, or whoever's the caregiver of the family. They have a strong impact on the child. So sometimes something happens and they even don't know it, and it causes childhood trauma. For example, if the child is sitting on the kitchen table, uh, happily chit-chatting with somebody who is cooking, and the mother comes in and she is in shock that the child is sitting unsupervised on the kitchen table. He could fall down, right? And it's rushing, you shouldn't sit on the kitchen table, and then then there's this guilt, and then there's this shock as well, right? This is just soaked in. And when the child now, for example, would fall down, or the mother would slip on the way to the child and break her leg or whatnot, then kind of a traumatic situation is already created, because this is the strong impact of guilt in this little child, which was suggested through the reaction of the mother. Yeah. And these are real life situations that I see in healing sessions, right? And the other thing, are you lifting your hand, Claudia? No. Yes, you do. Okay, let me just finish the sentence. And they cannot remember the event. That means that the event is stored in the subconscious mind. I mean, most of you, I bet, don't remember much from when they were up to 5 years old, right? So this is typical for the alpha state. You really don't remember. Maybe you have fragments which don't make much sense, and you don't know whether you dreamt it or it happened. But nevertheless, although you cannot remember it, everything that has happened is stored somewhere, and that is what we normally call the subconscious mind, right? That is where it's buried, and it's especially stored there when it has caused pain, like a trauma. Then it is caused there, stored there in the subconscious mind, and it will eventually make its way, when it's unaddressed, into the pain body or into the emotional body or the soul of the person involved into that, right? Okay, Claudia, what was the question?
I just have a question. So just for example, a child experiences an act of violence, and while that is happening, the spirit or the soul steps out of the body and watches from a corner, let's say. Is that then also stored in the family soul, or is that then not really a trauma?
Yeah, that's the same. That's a trauma. If the spirit is still in the body or not, that has no impact
No impact.
on the
Okay.
trauma. So when this act of violence is, which is most of the time it is, paired with shame or guilt, because the child would either be ashamed, especially with sexual abuse or something like that, or feel guilty because the adult is suggesting something like that, and sometimes even deliberately, not even accidentally. So for example, don't tell your mother, or your mother will be so upset that she's going to leave us, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
These are all suggestions that are creating the feeling of guilt and shame. And no, it doesn't matter if the spirit is in or out. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the family trauma, other than the childhood trauma, the family trauma comes from an entangled person, to one of the 3 dynamics that we learned in family constellation, who has experienced an act of violence or emotional trauma. This is when the trauma isn't addressed, isn't healed, and then through epigenetic heritage is passed on through blood-related family members down the generations. And one of the younger or the later generation is becoming out of love for a former family member entangled with this person, or with the perpetrator, or so it not necessarily need to be entangled with the victim. It can also be entangled with the perpetrator, right? So that makes no difference. Whoever is excluded from the family. Right. So the love is reaching out to the one who is not noticed by the family, who is through the act, whatever has been dismissed or forgotten, or is not mentioned in the family history, something like that. That's where the entanglement is taking place. It is an unacknowledged disorder in the family system that is not in balance, and often leads also to family secret, right? So we know now that family secret is then present when nobody is moving and nobody is relating to anybody. That is the situation. I just repeat that so it becomes more memorable when we are suggesting that there might be a family secret. Not not normally in an entanglement, you normally have an entanglement and you have the entangled person looking at the entangler, right? That's normal. So there is a relationship. That's what you see. That's where you start to inquire in the family constellation what dynamic you have in front of you. Just in the case that nobody's looking at anybody and you really don't know where to start, then it is likely that we have a family secret. It always is when we look at fear, that is the most common emotion with a trauma, right? And we are not talking about childhood trauma now necessarily. So every trauma that is which has a strong low vibrational emotion that comes with it, for example, fear, is also stored in the family soul, right? Or in the own soul, and becomes then available to the family soul once the body has passed on. So this fear is created in this traumatic situation, even though the person was never in danger. So this traumatic situation doesn't need to be a real danger, right? It is a perceived danger. And it is always a danger to die. Not the danger, the fear. Let's say the fear. It is always the fear to die that makes it impactful and memorable by the soul. So just because let's make an example. Somebody's beaten up by somebody else. Let's say brother and brother, they are fighting, and one is weaker and he's been beaten up by somebody else. But he know it's his brother. He will never kill him. You know, that's not traumatic. They might end up in a hospital. You know, and they might have emotional problems with each other in the relationship, but it's not a trauma for the soul, right? It's not stored as a trauma in the soul. Yeah. However, if a woman is robbed in the night on the street and beaten up by a gang and fears, you know, it's gonna die, this is a trauma that is actually stored. Because if, even though they never intended and would never have gone so far that she would die, she is afraid she's gonna die. Hmm? So now you have the impact and you have the low vibrating emotion, and that forms a trauma that is stored in the soul. This deep wound, this trauma leaves a deep wound in the soul. This is why we sometimes call it also a wounded soul, not only a trauma. So that's just another word for it. It passes on to the next generation through epigenetic inherited, right? We know that. And this wound needs to be healed in order to go ahead in life. This is why healing and helping has a wonderful impact on one's own life and the life of others that you touch. So the most common trauma that you will have with yourself and clients is the interrupted movement towards the mother. It is just very, very common. And the good news is that we have the best means to heal it with the orders of love and the methodology of family constellation that Bert Hellinger has gifted to the world, which is beautiful. So we talked about that. So I just repeat it again. The emotion of fear or anger is normally camouflaging the emotion of shame and guilt. So never be content when you see fear and anger. Look deeper, right? And often a representative who's connected to the field will say, if you ask them, if they say, I'm really angry, and you would ask, look where, you know, look deeper. Is it really anger? You're not suggesting, right? Not or is it never suggest, or is it shame? You know, you don't do that. But you say, look deeper. Is it really anger? Right? And then they would often say, actually, I'm ashamed, or I feel guilty. Right? And often they don't even have to say it, because you can see it in the representatives that they actually, they said I'm angry, but what you see when you are more experienced, you see that. When you have seen it a lot, then you see it, and you see it's actually not anger that you see, it's actually guilt. And then you know exactly that you are heading the right direction, because there would be a trauma, most commonly a childhood trauma, to be released. Okay, let's look at the guilt, trauma and guilt. Sudden happenings which cause trauma can be released immediately, right? So this is through crying, shaking, breathing. That's the innate capability of the body to release trauma. If you look at the animal world, like look at ducks on the pond, right? They are fighting, two males, yeah, and it's quite horrific. So one probably really gets hurt, because they don't, they are pretty fierce. And then after a few minutes or even longer, they fly off and they shake. They shake. And then they just swim away. It's done. It's forgotten. And we have the same capability. We can shake that off. We probably don't shake, although it would be probably good, but we do cry. We release it through crying, or through breathing as well. And that's great. So that's also good exercise. Every time when something happens to you that you feel is violating your boundaries, you can try to, through crying or breathing or shaking, to release it. However, this doesn't work when the emotion of guilt or shame is added to it, right? Because that puts the body into shock. And this is what the animals don't have. They don't have the emotion of fear or guilt. They don't know these emotions. So they can just shake it off, whatever has happened. We can't. Because if this is attached to this emotion, it is there. It sits with us. So it becomes a problem. And then the emotion of guilt blocks the release of shock and fear. And so often you see somebody who's really in shock, or in fear, and feels either guilty or ashamed. They are freezing, basically. They can't shake it off, and they can't cry neither, right? So this is what makes it then a problem, because then it is held in the subconscious mind, and later on it will be released as a phobia or allergy or another disease. That is the weird way of the subconscious mind to make itself known without giving any information away about the true event, because the subconscious mind thinks that is its function is to prevent you from pain. And because this was a painful event, the subconscious mind thinks we are not going there at all costs anymore. That's their job. They want that. They don't want you to look there. Yeah, but it's there. They can't deny it. The subconscious mind cannot deny that nothing has happened. So it becomes another problem, like a phobia or an allergy, which will be suddenly appear, and we call that a trigger. Something will happen that triggers this memory in the subconscious mind, and instead of releasing the true information, which it will never do, never say never, which it will not do lightly, it releases something else, which is weird, which causes a disease, an imbalance. So we talked about that guilt and shame are the lowest vibration. And these emotions are hiding for the survival. The subconscious mind makes sure of it. And they appear as any of other of the low vibrating emotions: grief, fear, desire, or anger. Okay, let's look at guilt and family constellations. How does that look like? So the feeling of guilt is when wrongdoing is occurring, like perceived wrongdoing, of course, And that is the wrongdoing is the disobeying of the orders of love. That is what creates the feeling of guilt. I say the feeling of guilt because we're going to look at it closer today, and at the end we're going to decide, or we come to the conclusion that guilt is actually a made up emotion, right? An emotion that is not naturally existing, a mind-made emotion. Hmm? So this is why this wording is a little bit vague to be correct. Yeah. Observed as unable to look at or go to the other which has been wronged, right? That is the guilt. Therefore, other family members, descendants, are taking over the role to feel the guilt or to look at the victim. They do that. What the person who was originally creating this event or this emotion is not capable of doing because the subconscious mind is hindering them to do it. And sometimes, so when you have a client and they say, "Oh, I always feel so guilty," you know, whatever. I have 3 children and I always feel so guilty when I have to go to work because I feel I can't look after them enough or something like that. Because you are, you know, you are trained in looking at the family system and looking behind the scene and behind the words that have been said, you would always ask yourself, is this their fear, a guilt, feeling of guilt, or is this from somebody else? There's always these 2 options. You always have to inquire in both directions. And obviously the client doesn't know that there are 2 options. They only think they, you know, they are in the position of, you know, doing something wrong and potentially being guilty for when the children are suffering or something like that, right? They never think that they have taken over this emotion from somebody else in their family system. So this is your job to find out if that is true. Because if you wouldn't look at it, like most of the psychotherapists do, they only look at the person they are working with, then they would never find the real cause of it. And even if they can lift a little bit the feeling of guilt from this person after years and years and years of psychotherapy, then one of the children will probably have the same problem because it's a systemic emotion created way before that. The entangled person has the same symptoms as if it would be an own childhood trauma. So you don't know by the symptoms of the client if it is an own trauma or if it is an entanglement, a family trauma. You don't know that because it absolutely looks absolutely the same. And of course, the client doesn't know it neither. So here we go, our work to find that out. Mana?
Maya, can you also inherit a family phobia and not just a trauma?
Interesting
Like
question.
there's a dog phobia in my family on my father's side, and I have a horrible dog phobia. I have no connection, like I've never been bitten, I don't have a bad experience, but it feels like it's just passing down.
Okay, Mana, this is wonderful. We will take you today as a sample and look at that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Because we have to find out, now that you offer this to us, where
Great, thank
the source of that is. Okay.
you.
So let's look a little bit at the subconscious mind. I just gave you an idea of one of the function of this, but there are in fact 3 basic functions of the subconscious. One is growth, maintenance, and repair of the body, right? The subconscious mind does this all without you having to think about it, because you would be exhausted to think about every heartbeat. Okay, heartbeat now, right? You can't do that. You can't think about cell renewal, right? Or growth of your hair or something. That the subconscious mind is doing that. You are not thinking about it, right? The second function of the subconscious, we call it also body memory, like driving a car to, to work, always the same. You barely remember how how you even got there one day, because the subconscious mind did it completely on its own. The subconscious mind has the function to relieve the mind, right? As much as possible. Hmm? And that's a great job. I mean, we can't, we cannot function without a functional subconscious mind, right? Takes over a lot of the work of the mind. And then the third one is avoiding pain. That's also a function of the subconscious mind. A very, very valuable function, because as you know, when you're in pain, you can barely do anything else. And all creativity, and that is the sole purpose of life, is to create, is completely interrupted as long as you have pain. I don't know whether you ever have realized that when you are in pain, tooth pain, or you have bent your ankle, or headache, migraine, or something, right? You have no joy, and you can't create anything, right? You can't write or read or anything like that. And that's why the subconscious mind wants to avoid pain for you. And then we have the situation, in a traumatic situation, that the subconscious mind is overdoing the job. So it wants you to never have this, especially emotional pain again, and hides it from you. And does not know that if it would release this information in the right environment, it would be healed forever, right? That's too much for the subconscious mind. It will not understand that. And on the level of the physical pain, I don't know whether you have noticed, but if you have injured a joint, for example, right, it becomes stiff. Calcium is produced from the body and is laying around the inflamed joint to make it immobile. And although we don't like this immobility, but the body does, the subconscious mind is steering the body to do that, because it thinks when you move this whatever shoulder or knee, then it's painful. But when you can't move it anymore because there's calcium around it and makes it stiff, then the pain is gone. This is how the subconscious mind works, right? So the subconscious mind needs to be triggered. For example, if you have a childhood trauma and you are probably 40 years old, let's make an example. Childhood trauma could be, let's take this car accident situation, right? So you have a childhood trauma because you were sitting in the car, you've been silly, been probably 3 years old, you've been silly, or you've been annoying or whatnot. The dad turns around to whatever, shut you up or whatnot, and drives into a tree, right? And maybe dies. And the child survives. And in the subconscious mind, there is a shock, fear of dying, shock, plus guilt that the father died because of me. Okay. Now, this is completely, nobody knows anything about it. It's completely hidden by the subconscious mind. Now, this child, let's say it's a girl, it's a woman, becomes 35 and gives birth to her first daughter. And half a year later, she got, like, let's say, asthma. She gets asthmatic, whatever, to dust or whatever, animal hair or whatnot. If you look at it, you don't see any relationship there, right? But if you go in a regression to the source of this asthma, you will find it is the childhood trauma when she was 3 years old sitting in the car. And the birth of her child was what we call the trigger to this memory. And often the trigger is not releasing or causing this disease immediately. It takes up to half a year. So for example, in this case, you have a client, she is 30, let's say she's 40, she has a 5-year-old daughter. She says, I'm having asthma and it's so bothering me. I can't barely breathe. I can't have any pets. My daughter wants a rabbit and I can't have it. And not a cat, not a dog, not even a rabbit, not even a hamster. That's so sad. I really, want to get over it. And then you would ask, so when happened? When did it happen first? When did it happen? Did you have that, or like since you're born, or no? And then she has to think about it. And then she would think about it, and then she would think, I probably have it since 4.5 years. And then you would ask, so what happened 5 years ago? You always ask what happened like up to half year before. And then she said, well, nothing special. And then you said, do you not have a 5-year-old daughter? And they said, oh yeah. She said, of course, yeah, I gave birth to my daughter 5 years ago, right? And then you know, aha, that's the trigger. Now you don't know what it triggered, like, but you know it has to do with the birth of a daughter. So it has to do probably with a little girl, being a little girl. And then you do a regression like we will do here in this module. We will train that, and the subconscious mind we will trick the subconscious mind to release the information. Will then release information of the true cause of the asthma, which was this childhood trauma, and we would know how to release it. And then chances are good that she won't suffer this asthma anymore. So just as a take-home message, your subconscious mind is concerned with your survival, not your happiness. Yeah, the subconscious mind doesn't care if you are burdened with suppressed emotions, as long as you survive. And the subconscious mind thinks if you would be in pain, you cannot survive. Okay, let's look at trauma and trigger. A panic attack. Some clients, or may you have discovered for yourself what a panic attack is. Some clients come to you with panic attacks. Yeah, a panic attack is a phobia, and it is an attempt from the subconscious mind to release these emotions without releasing the information. Yeah, that's a panic attack. It doesn't work because without this information being dealt with and finding the healing movement, it is still there. It's not going away. But the subconscious mind thinks that's, enough with these emotions. We have to release it, and that's what we call a panic attack. It takes enormous energy to suppress emotions of fear or guilt from the whole body system. So this is why the body is vibrating in a low frequency. People suffering a trauma will have less energy and are emotionally weak and fall ill often. And this is not related to the trauma. This is just caused by the low energy of the body and the low frequency of the body. You only experience the trigger, not the trauma. So when a client talks to you about what happened, like what happened when the asthma came, that's the trigger. That's never the trauma. Yeah. So if in our example, you would in the questioning, you come to the conclusion that the asthma was caused through the birth of the child, yeah, that makes no sense to work with this and try to find a trauma there for the mother in the birth of the child, right? This is only the trigger, not the trauma. So you have to go back. This is why we do a regression most often in these cases. You have to go back where the trauma was originated. You have to find the guilt or the shame and release it there. So childhood trauma is released through regressions, which we'll look at tomorrow, and family trauma is released in family constellation. And this is why it's very, very valuable to have both methods at your hand. Because Bert Hellinger was not really showing how to release childhood trauma, right? I have this method from Malcolm Southwood. Very effective and very straightforward. Okay, let's talk about birth energies and rebirthing. First of all, what is birth? Birth is, by definition, a change from the non-physical reality into the physical reality. Because before there, something was there, like a seed, but it wasn't physical. And then it becomes a body. Nothing can come from nothing. Can we agree on that? Okay. The heart plays a big, big role in the birth, and I will show you that in my little animation, how that goes. A big, big role in the birth also plays what Malcolm Southwood calls birth energies. That are special energies that only the mother can create and the child while they are birthing, while they give birth. An energy a man never has, and the boy only while it is going through the birth experience, right? So that's a very unique energy that you don't find anywhere else. We look at how a human being is created, and then we will talk about rebirthing. And later today, we talk about the interrupted movement towards the mother, because this is the first childhood trauma that we normally experience in our lives. Okay, birth energies. From the moment the birth starts, and that is typically when the water breaks, or the first contraction is, or the opening of the cervix. That is the moment when the birth starts, right? From this moment on, the birth begins. So everything we talk about a birth is when it starts there. The birth energies are emerging in this moment, and they are both alike in mother and in baby. And the birth energies are the ones that are creating the, if you look at it, the close relationship from the child in the womb to the mother, right? The closest one can ever be with another human being. And the love that is between these two, yeah? You would normally not want to give that away. You want to hold on to that, right? But we all know the baby has to come out of the womb one day. And that is what the birth energies are creating, this desire to let go of each other. That is super important. And it also creates the strength to do that, because it causes it needs enormous energy to give birth naturally to a child, and enormous energies from the child to go through the birth, because they do it together, mother and child. The birth energies in a normal birth, we are looking at how they look like. And then we also look at the birth energies in a fast, interrupted, or forced birth. Also, what is happening with these energies in a slow or in a traumatic birth. And we are looking at cesarean sections in specific. And then we also look at PPD, postpartum depression. So, normal birth. Hands up, who has given birth? Okay, so you know, hands up who has given normal birth, normal, like natural. Oh, cool. So we had no cesarean section here. Okay, good. So how long? Let's start with Alessandra. How long was how many hours did the birth last?
Well, 3 of them were different. The first was 9 hours. Then the next was 10 hours, 11 hours, and the last was 3 hours.
Okay, very good. Thank you. You will learn later on, you know, how to categorize this birth.
Yes.
And Claudia?
The first one was 4 hours. And the second one, my waters broke the day before she was born. So there was a
And
bit
how
longer.
long was
So,
labor?
the labor itself with the pain was only for 1.5 hours.
It's the second one.
Yeah.
And Julie?
7 hours.
7 hours. So Julie won the prize, if there would be any, for a normal birth, because that is about how long a normal birth lasts. It is 6.5 hours. That's
Okay.
the normal length of a birth. Hmm?
Mm.
6.5 to 7. I actually had the pleasure to have exactly 6.5 hours with my son.
Wow.
So 6 to 8 hours is a normal birth. Everything that takes longer than 8 hours or less than 8 hours is not considered a normal birth. It's either considered a fast or a slow birth. Yeah. During this normal birth, there is a release of a huge amount of instinct birth energies in both mother and baby, and the birth energies in everyone are selected to last exactly this 6 to 8 hours.
Wow. Mm.
The baby needs to go through the birthing channel to stabilize the spirit in the body. We will talk about that as well. So this is another aspect why a normal birth is also from a spiritual perspective desirable, or let's say designed to go through. And the baby needs to use up all the birth energies by struggling to move out of the womb, and the mother uses her power to push the baby out. So the energies which are very specific only for the birth event of the birth, they also need to be used up, because otherwise they cannot be used. They are so specifically designed for the birth that they are not like energy that you can run off. Let's say you would go on a jog and these energies, when they are not used up, they are sticking somewhere around and causing problems. So the baby has to stay uninterrupted with the mother until the colostrum has been delivered. The colostrum is the first portion of liquid that comes from the mother's breast that contains, it's very specific, and that contains on a physical body an initial reservoir of nutrients that are preventing the baby from diseases and that are making the immune system, bringing the immune system alive, and all sorts of things, right? So that is actually at the end of a birth is when the mother has delivered the colostrum to the baby, which happens normally immediately after the birth, right? There's normally not much time in between. The baby needs its the baby comes with a spiritual protective shield. And that is around the baby for several weeks. And therefore, this ancient practice for the mother and the baby to stay for 40 days in bed or at home is very, very valuable, because it is not only good for the mother to rest, it's also for the baby to stay in the bubble, yeah, with the mother and not be bothered. I know this is not what today happens, but that is what nature has intended to do, right? So the mother and the baby stay together for 40 days, and the other women of the family looking after them, and that's it. The baby is not, showed off or carried around and by random neighbors lifted or anything like this, because naturally for the baby that is vulnerable, and that would also break, so to speak, through the energetic shield, right?
Wow.
So the father can be involved, but he is not needed in this 40 days, and he need to be properly instructed if he wants to do that. If you want to follow these structure, if you have a baby and you think you want to do that. The father doesn't need to be involved from the perspective of a spiritual, or from the perspective of a physical and spiritual birth of mother and child. And in most traditions, they are not, right? Traditionally, they don't play a big role. And they haven't played a big role at all until the 19th century, when the doctors thought that would be a great new field for them to take away the work of the midwives, because before a doctor was not involved when when a mother had a child. It was only midwives they were involved. But then, they wanted to take over this field, and then it became like a profession, and everything else became a little bit more unnatural.
Yeah.
Until now, where it's really, 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 really bizarre what happens now in hospitals with mother and child. Or I don't know whether it still it is, but 20 years ago it was still quite strange. So, what else do I want to share? Ah, yeah, okay. So now here comes my little animation. So I want to show you here how the human body is created. So we have the physical body. Yeah, we know now the physical body's home is Earth. And then we have the astral body, which is the seat of the soul. And the home is the astral plane. And then we have the spiritual body, and the home is the world of light. So now the higher self needs to be reunited with the astral body, which is left behind at the end of the last life in the astral world, remember, in the color, in the emotion they have become, to go home to the light, because the spiritual body cannot stay there, right? The spiritual body is free of emotions. So they are not staying in the astral world. They go home to the world of light, but they are still connected. Still, that's an individual body, the spiritual body, practically waiting for the astral body to be reborn, right? To create a new human experience. The soul needs to learn the planned lesson in the new body, and therefore has to be in line with the karma of mother and father. So the purpose of the soul in the astral world is to reflect on what has happened in the life, why did they become this particular emotion, and how to overcome this and come into higher frequencies of emotions in the next life. That's the goal when you're in the astral world. And that is what we call the learning of the soul. Now in the astral world, nobody's alone. you know, there are teachers, there are lessons to learn, but you cannot practice anything because it's all without the body. You cannot experience emotions. You can only desire to experience them once you have a body. And this is when the earth comes into play, providing this field of experiences. So the body needs to be stable and genetically intact. So this is why the soul with the karma and the body with the genetics, they all needs to be in line with the family this new human being is born into. So this is not easy, right? This needs to be carefully orchestrated. Otherwise, we would have a lot more miscarriages or a lot more failed conceptions, right? That is the highest the high arts of creating a new human being. And this is also the reason why we see when we see family constellations and the family system, which we know it has roughly about 300 members and more, that you often also can see past life issues there, because we are all reborn into the same family system over and over again. Because this is where we have the genetically closest material, so it is easy for the body to be formed and not rejected by the mother. And also the karma in the family is often, you know, quite similar, because everybody is in the same family system repeating the same trauma, the same things. So this is where we can easily enter. So this makes it desirable to reincarnate into the same family system. And there's also the saying, we are our own ancestors. That is now probably more understandable or understood. Okay, what is the next step? What happens? So in the first 12 weeks, when a physical body is born, meaning father and mother, the potential father and mother, they have met, they have slept with each other or used IVF, that doesn't make any difference. And then conception has taken place. And now we have week 1 to 12 where, you know, the cells are forming. The most important part is that the heart is the first organ that is formed. Only from the arteria and the vena, the other one, they come together, they cluster, and they form the heart. That is absolutely magic, because there's only clusters of cells, but the heart is forming. It's the first thing. And this is why is from a spiritual aspect also mind-blowing, because what happens is in week 5 to 6, you can hear in the ultrasound the heartbeat. Week 5, right? And that is not only to pump blood, because there's not even blood, there's nothing to pump. What this pump does is it creates an electromagnetic field that is measurable. And this electromagnetic field of the body attracts the soul from the astral plane. This heartbeat is necessary to attract your soul, your emotional body from the astral plane down to earth. Right? That's the connection. That's through the heartbeat. In week 13 to 16, your soul comes from the astral world. Coming from the astral world is actually combining with your physical body. This is why miscarriages are rare after the first 3 months. Because the body is stable enough, the heartbeat has a strong enough electromagnetic field to combine and hold the soul. And the soul is coming in because the expectations that the body will survive are high. Otherwise, it wouldn't make the effort to do so. And this is also the reason this heartbeat, which is the first heartbeat, which is actually the connection from the physical body to the soul body, is for us in a family constellation also where we say this is a family member. It's not the 12 weeks, it's the 5 weeks. This is why miscarriages that happen between, you know, week 6 and 12 are already seen in a family constellation, and abortions as well. In week 17 to 40, your spirit who's waiting in the world of light gets attracted to the body and emotional body who is created and who's growing in the womb of the mother. However, it's not the spiritual body is surrounding the physical and the emotional body, but it's not combining in it. It's not going in there yet. It's observing until week 40. And then during the process of birth, which is normally 6 to 8 hours, the spirit works its way into the body, into the physical body and this emotional body. And that to combine with them, to become one with them. This is why the normal birth with its 6 to 8 hours is considered a normal birth, where the soul and the spirit has a chance to completely combine with the physical body and take residence there, so to speak. I mean, you know, this is a concept, of course, right? Don't ask me where's the soul sitting in the body and where's the, it's a concept, right? So don't get too hooked up in details here. Nobody knows where they are sitting. But that is the explanation, the concept that I really love, that I have from Malcolm Southwood, because it explains a lot and it works in real life. I have worked a lot with this with clients, and this is very accurate. So if the birth is longer or shorter than the 6 to 8 hours, yeah, they either haven't used up the birth energies, or they have exhausted them, so to speak. And this can, and they will, either mother and child or both will develop later symptoms of unused birth energies, which we will look at how they look like. So what happens then at birth? The spirit comes in and the baby is born, does its first breath, its first cry, its first suck on the tits of the mother, and hooray, the new human is born. The new journey begins, the new chance to evolve begins, right? So from this day on, from the day of birth until what we call death, which we'll look at tomorrow, the human is living on Earth until hopefully changing see the color change. The soul changes the color to another vibration, to another emotional vibration. And then when the heart beats, until the last beat or the last breath, when it gets weaker and weaker and cannot hold the soul closer anymore, because the electromagnetic field is weaker and weaker and weaker. And then one day the heart stops, there is no electromagnetic field created, and the soul is drawn to its color, right? So it's either where you came from when you didn't learn your lesson, or it goes somewhere else, in another realm, with another dominant emotion, right, to learn another lesson. And the spirit goes back to the world of light where it's always been and waits for the next experience. So this is just a chart where I've put everything together. If you want to make a screenshot, then you can do that here. But you can
Maya,
also
can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
How do we know which is our color? Is there a way that we can know what is our color in,
I think
in this
so.
life? Or
I think so. Yeah.
So how can you know?
Maybe people who see auras maybe can tell you.
Oh, okay. So the color of your aura represents kind of like the.
I would say so. Or you can probably see that in a meditation.
Okay.
Mhm. I'm sure you can. I don't know yet how, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure it would be possible. Or maybe a representative can do that for you in a family constellation. Who knows?
I want to know my color.
Yeah. I mean, that would be another lovely thing to practice, would be to find out if there's a way to find out the color.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Thank you.
So now we come to look at the heart, which plays this vital role in our lives. Lots of roles, really, but the heart is so magic. And I'm really talking about the physical heart here, but there's also the heart space, the spiritual and heart, which is, I don't want to divide them, right? For me, this is one. So just physical heart is an expression of the spiritual heart. The spiritual heart is an expression of the physical heart. So the heartbeat creates the strong electromagnetic field, which shows the three energetic bodies together. The soul is attracted back to the astral plane and the spirit to the world of light when the heart isn't creating the strong electric field anymore, right? That is called the spiritual law of gravity. Because otherwise the soul couldn't travel to the astral world or back. The soul is always attracted through their own realm of astral. But the heart binds it to the body. Also, when you know when you sleep and your heart rate goes down and is shallower, that you do that what is called astral travel, right? That means that the soul is going back, attracted back where its home is, right? But as soon as you wake up, the heart beats faster again, it has to come back. That's the spiritual law of gravity. Hmm? And also when you're in deep meditation and you slow your heart down, that's when you can, let go, or when the soul lets go of the body. Or some people have these out of body experiences. It's all has to do with the heart and the electromagnetic field that it's creating. The hands are created from the tissues that are surrounding the heart. The hands are a literal expansion of the heart. This is why the tradition to shake hands when you meet is also to connect from heart to heart. Yeah. Or this is why we love the touch of others normally, if it's not malicious. And and this is also how gestures are so important, right? Because they come literally from the heart if you do this. The heart chakra is the turning point from animal nature to spiritual being. I'm sure you all know that. Right? Out of the lower chakras, which are animal nature, into the higher chakras, right, for higher living. And that's the hardest. There's a beautiful book that I recommend, Living from the Heart by Nirmala, which I found really valuable. So if you want to know more about the role of the heart and how to live from the heart rather than from the mind, Nirmala has a beautiful way to teach that or to express that. Okay, let's look at the fast or interrupted or forced birth. So every birth that is shorter than 6 hours is a fast, interrupted, or forced birth. By definition, in this concept, right? So let's say 5 hours, because of course there's a gray area, to make it really precise. Less than 5 hours, the birth energies have been fully formed, because they start to form with the beginning of the birth, but not been used up completely. That is what happens, right? and then the birth is over and the birth energies are still there, or parts of the birth energy. Mother and baby are still energetically connected because the birth energy are not used up, they are still there. And the birth energy is the desire to let go of each other. So the energy and the information of I have to let go of you is in the child and in the mother still present. That's an important piece of information. So this movement of the child and the mother is still in the state of I let go of you. I push you away. I don't want you anymore. When this has happened, and they did that in former times, this is why it was women's thing to had nothing to do with hospitals and men and everything. They would swaddle a baby that was fast born because the swaddle is like tying them really, really close like this, which looks horrible, like a bean, the baby, but it's brilliant method for the baby to release birth energies directly after birth, because they have to struggle. They will struggle against the tightness. It's like the birth canal, right? But it has to be done immediately after the birth, the swaddling. Or later on, in its therapy, if the mother gets the information that the child who is aggressive or difficult or something like that may place a struggle to get free game, right? That's the same. That's like encouraging the child to press against to have the child on the lap and press with the feet against the mother's belly while hold it really, really tight. So it really has to struggle to get away. And as more it wants to get away, and as more you hold it. It's also called, Irina Prekov has given it a name, Festhaltetherapie in German. I don't know the English term. It's a therapy to hold tight, so to speak. Yeah, and that is very very effective. As an adult, this child who has this not used up birth energy can have a rebirthing, or in case of a phobia, a regression to release the birth energy. So we can help. The good news is we can help this child in every stage of its life until the moment but he or she dies, can still release the birth energy. So the mother who has also unused birth energies can be guided in a regression back to the birth, can rebirth the child and release now the remaining birth energy. So also the mother can be helped. Now we are looking at the slower traumatic birth. So who again had a short birth, a fast birth? Alessandra, did you? Claudia, Alessandra, yeah. How old are your children? They're adults, aren't they? Yeah, yeah. So if if you feel like you have symptoms of unused birth energies from this, then you know what to do. You can release that. Maybe even a practice workshop. The next one. Remember that. But we go through the symptoms later to find out if that's the case. And if the children wants to do that, that's their decision, right? They are adults, they should decide that for themselves. So now we're talking about the slower the traumatic birth. That means a birth that was longer than 8 hours. Longer than 8 hours. So that means the symptoms of that is that the baby, toddler, or child has a poor concentration and poor reasoning. It allows to spend time alone. It doesn't like water or head underwater. So that's another symptom. It's because it has been so long. you know, for them during the birth, is often impatient, like, oh, let it be over now, and aggressive, and feels frustration, fear, anger, and is also somebody who is normally fast in decision making, in running, and you know, some where you know where you think, oh my God, this child is like Speedy Gonzales. That is a sign of a slow birth. And it can also be why the child is bullying other children, you know, because they want others out of the way, so to speak, right? They have this trauma that they can't get out. As an adult, a child who had a slower traumatic birth is often coughing without being infected, can have psoriasis, the disease on the skin, feels claustrophobic, or sometimes self-inflicts also wounds. So cuttings and stuff like this, that can be from a slow birth, a trauma from a slow birth, because they want to see the blood that finally signifies, so a symbol for, you know, when the child comes out and all the blood comes out, that's the relief that the birth is over. And that is a kind of in the head of the child, that they are longing to see that subconsciously. And then we have the early birth, which is different to what we have just said, because that is giving birth before the birth energies are even starting. That's what we call an early birth. That would be before week 38, or at any time when the baby is not ready to leave the womb, because that's individual, right? What is before birth energies, right? So anytime the baby is not ready. And this we always have in planned cesarean sections, because they obviously have to be before the natural birth. Or what else can that be? Or if there's a danger, a physical danger for mother or child, then you also have an early birth with a cesarean section. Or you can also have, sometimes you get an early birth that is not a cesarean section, although I don't think they do it anymore, but a forced early birth with medication, right? Children, oh, hang on, this is not showing. Here we go. Children that were born early are often quiet and clingy. They do have separation anxiety from the mother and need mother's energy. Why is that? Now you know why. Because the energy that is created with the start of the birth that wants them to let go of the mother is not there. So they don't have the desire to let go of the mother at all. There is nothing that wants them to let go of the mother. This is why they are very clingy. They like to pinch, bite, and scratch as children as well. That's kind of their expression. And as adults, I like that, they are always late. And
All Argentinians have early births then.
of course, if it's what you do is you play, so you want to reignite the natural birth, right? You want to come to the stage where there is actually the birth starting, and do this birth game with children, right? So you would have also this 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 holding of the child, this pushing, this games where it can struggle and push, and just something to feel like it has to use energy to let go of the mother, right? In any way, shape, or form you can think of that might happen, right? And when this child is an adult, you can help with rebirthing, with the rebirthing process, and what that is, we will talk about in the second half, and how we conduct that and how it helps. So cesarean section is obviously when there is an early birth, because it's planned or it's an emergency. So a cesarean section after the birth has started, already birth energies have created. So it's either a slow or normally well, it depends on when the cesarean section is. Can be a slow or fast birth, right? But before the birth has started, which is the planned cesarean, that's an early birth. And we see this is now kind of like common, that this is happening a lot, right? A lot of hospitals are treating delivering a child like a kidney transfusion or whatnot. They want to plan that. They want to have it in their calendar. They want to have it between 9 and 5, Monday to Friday. And this is why, they are forcing the women to come a week or two earlier to the hospital and have a cesarean section, pretending that that would be much better, less painful, and all this rubbish. No idea what they are taking away from the mother and the child with this. Indigo children, you all heard the term, I suppose, right? This indigo blue that people see, who can see auras around the children, and then they came up to the idea that they're special children from another planet or whatnot. This is the missing. This is the color of the spirit, and this is just indicating that the spirit had no chance to combine with the body, so it's surrounding the body, right? And this is when there was not this natural birth. The spirit needs the natural birth, the child going through the birth canal, to come in. So if you look at it, when all this indigo children stuff appeared, that was when cesarean section, planned cesarean became a new normal, right? Because all these children, they don't have the spirit firmly combined with the emotional and physical body, because they never went through the birth canal. And that is all. And of course, these children, they are a little bit aloof and lofty, and that all the symptoms that some interpret as special children, that is just symptoms of not being born yet, They are still floating around somehow, in a way. But you can help them, of course, now with the rebirthing, or with any other, or with the regression, or with the family constellation. Okay, so we have an exercise. I was planning to do that after the break, but I think we can do it now. Let's see, because we have a couple of more minutes. So that's the exercise. I want you to work in groups, and you are working groups of 2. One group has 3, and then the exercise is assessing birth energies. So you ask a couple of questions, your partner, and find out if there's any issue with the birth, with their own birth, not the birth they gave to children, right? With their own birth. So often you know something from your mother or from your father, or somebody said something about your birth, right? That's not uncommon, that you know something. And so you interview your partner, what do they know from their birth? And then you interview them, if they show any signs of what we have just. I know that you haven't learned it yet; you just heard it, so don't. It's lighthearted, yeah. No, don't take it too serious. Whatever stuck in your mind, you inquire if you can find out if there's anything needed, like a rebirthing, right? And then so first of all, you tell each other about the birth, and then you decide if a rebirthing is needed, or if maybe your partner has an interrupted movement towards the mother, and then you also try to find out why. What are the signs? Yeah. So what is the signs to an interrupted movement towards the mother, and what are the signs of an interrupted birth, or not released birth energies, or whatever you can find out. And it is You don't need to do, of course, anything. This is just the assessment, you know, just to find out. And you make some notes, and we talk about that after the exercise a little bit. And it's really enough if you find 1 or 2 hints. You don't need to dig too deep. Okay. All right. So let me stop sharing here, and where is this? And assign you to groups. So you were a group?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So let's start with you before the others come. How was this little exercise for you?
It was very interesting.
You want to go, Mana?
Okay, sure. So when I was talking to Julie, what she said was she was an early birth. But interestingly, the symptoms that we discussed, they were on the contrary. So while we discussed a child tends to become clingy and wants to be with the parent more, what we realized in Julie's case is that on the contrary, it was her mother who was more clingy towards her, and Julie was the more independent child. So Maya, it's a question. Could it happen that an early birth for the mother is also, it impacts the mother, that she tends to get clingy towards the child because she's not ready to let the child come that early?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly the same energies for the mother as for the child.
Yeah. So that's what we realized has happened with Julie in her relationship with the mother.
Very good. Very good. Yes, very good. So even that's good. Even if Julie doesn't experience the symptoms, they are in her mother, which is then a sign that it is symptomatic, although Julie not experiences it directly, which can have, you know, I don't know, reasons. But in this case, it would be indicated that Julie does a rebirthing.
Yeah.
And Julie, how was this when you were talking about to Mana?
Yeah, to Mana. Well, Mana didn't know a lot about her birth, but as we talked about it, she had a natural birth. She was on the due date. It was hospital birth, so I guess there could be some interrupted movement depending on how the hospital handles that. She was the first child, but one thing she did say afterwards that her mum experienced postpartum depression. Her dad wasn't around a lot, so she was alone. Or felt alone, and she had this sadness, and Mana said that she feels this sadness for no reason sometimes. So that was something perhaps to look at in terms of a constellation more so than a rebirthing, I think.
Very good. We will actually right after the break we will look at postpartum depression. That is spot on, and you will learn a lot then there, I'm sure, Mana. Okay, and the next group. Who wants to start? Claudia?
I interviewed Rocio, and Rocio said that her mom told her that her birth was not very painful, but it was between 10 and 11 hours. That her mom was by herself, which she was very unhappy about. Obviously, it was an easy birth. And Rosie also said she was about a week or 10 days late. And I thought, well, it's very likely an interrupted movement towards the mother, and because the mother also felt very unhappy at the time that she was left alone to deal with it.
Okay. Good. So you got a picture when you talk to Rocio, what you would probably want to do?
Yeah, I probably would say looking for an interrupted movement towards the mother. Yeah.
Very good. Next one. Yes, Rocio?
Yes. Rosie, are you
No,
going
you go,
first?
Ale.
Okay.
Go.
Yes.
Yeah.
I asked Claudia, and she was born natural 9 weeks early. And the first hours of her life, she was fighting for her life. And then she stayed in the hospital 2 months in an incubator. So she also wasn't breastfed. So with that, I will say both rebirth and interrupted movement towards the mother.
Yeah, that sounds like it. Yeah.
Yes.
So what kind of symptoms did you inquire in any symptoms, Claudia, as an adult now?
No, we didn't get into that. We stayed in the birth,
Okay.
more in the birth experience. Yes.
Good. Very good.
Mhm.
Okay, and Rocio.
So I interviewed Ale, and her mom had a planned C-section for convenience for traveling. So they were like traveling between cities. She wasn't breastfeed. She was born in the 40 weeks, so she was on term. And she did experience some digestion problems when she grew up. So from my point of view, I will definitely recommend a rebirth, actually.
Very good.
Well, probably that will escalate to like interrupted movement, but
The first thing would be rebirthing. Very good.
rebirth, yeah.
Very good. Very good. So that was a little tidbit and to look in how to deal with clients and their birth experiences. And it's really amazing how they do remember things. Because this is like always when we work with the morphogenetic field, the information that is needed for your work and to help the client and for the client to help themselves will be revealed. Even if they say, I know nothing about my birth, and then all of a sudden there comes one information, and that is igniting the whole healing session, right? So great. So I hope you enjoyed this exercise, and we have time, and we will go deeper into that in practice workshops. If you have discovered something that you want to look at, then definitely make a note, and if this is still present for you in a practice workshop, then bring it up to look at it. Yeah. Okay. So we go now break now. I see you back in 10 minutes. Bye. Okay, so we are talking now about PPD, postpartum depression. And really, when we are looking at postpartum depression, everything comes together that we have talked about today. It has to do with interrupted birth energies, it has to do with interrupted movement towards the mother, and it has to do with entanglement. So yeah, let's look at it in greater detail. So what is postpartum depression? It is the rejection of the baby from the mother after giving birth. Giving birth, as we know, releases memories of being born, right? So the mother that gives birth to the baby is triggered, yeah, by her own birth trauma, yeah, or by her own interrupted movement towards her mother. Because becoming a mother is a trigger. The PPD itself causes an interrupted movement in the baby because the mother is rejecting the baby. So right here, the child has its first interrupted movement towards the mother. What is indicated here is a rebirthing or a family constellation or a combination, most often a combination of both, a respective 2 sessions at least, right? So there was a case of, who was it again, of PPD? We were just discussing that. Who was that? Mana? Can you remind me, what was it? Your mother was rejecting you?
So I don't think it was so much at the level of rejecting me, but yes, she went through a depression post my birth.
Okay, so yeah, let's look at what we have here on our chart, right? So your mother giving birth to you, that could have been a trigger of her own unreleased birth energies in the in when she was born from her mother, right? So you could ask your mother if she remembers anything of her birth. Not remembering in the means of like the baby remember, but what people said, the mother said to her about her birth, and to inquire into that. Now that you know that there might be unreleased birth energies in her because she was too fast born, right? That would be one thing that triggers it. So then, as you know now, when it was a fast birth, the energies of letting go from each other is still present. Yeah. And this desire to let go of the baby is triggered when she gives birth to her own baby, and then she has the desire to let go of her own baby, even if the birth was normal. So that's a combination of a birth trauma and unreleased birth energies at the same time. And then it causes an interrupted movement in the child as well. Or your mother, Mana, has an interrupted movement towards her mother because her mother had PPD. And then giving birth to you was triggering the memory.
So
PPD.
what also affected my mom was my father wasn't around too much when I was born, and neither was his family very supportive. Like she had to take care of me all by herself. So she went through a lot of isolation and aloneness in bringing me up.
So this is normal and it's desirable that the mother and the child are together and they don't need the support of the father.
Okay.
So if there is an issue from your mother to, or like a resentment or an
Yeah.
anger, yeah,
Yes.
that is related, that is your mother's issue
Yes.
that comes from another source.
Mm.
Yeah. So that cannot be you giving birth, her giving birth to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
True.
Good. So when you have a case of postpartum depression, you go most likely through rebirthing with your client and a family constellation and see if there is a systemic trauma behind it. Okay, let's look into rebirthing. How does that look like? What are we actually doing? I know that is especially in the 80s and 90s, that was quite a thing. You know, you go to rebirthing, and I actually have been to a weekend of rebirthing and stuff like this. And I can tell you from my own experience, that doesn't work. But what really works is the way that I've been taught by Michael Southwood of the rebirthing, and that's what I ever since then use when I work with client, and that's what I'm conveying to you. And I know this is a very effective method of rebirthing. However, I have transformed it due to the fact that the rebirthing I have learned is hands-on, and now we do it virtually, right? So I have, uh, I don't know, transcripted it into a virtual situation, and it works very well as well. That's the only difference. So I haven't learned it virtually. Okay, so how does that look like? First up, the setup and the preparation we have to talk about. So setup and preparation for rebirthing is either so I'm talking to you now as if it would be one-on-one, because this would be the situation you are most likely in, right? I do not recommend that you have a client on the screen and you do as a beginner a rebirthing on the screen. That can cause all kinds of problems. Practice with people who are actually there, right? So you have a room, and you should prepare the room with pillows and blankets, and have like either like a futon or a thick carpet or something really warm and cozy on the floor, which is also keeping everyone safe, because it can be quite physical, the rebirthing. Then you want to be close to your client. So your client is, let's say you sit next to each other like in a family constellation. And also this rebirthing, you can also happen when you have a family constellation workshop. So be always prepared, that can happen. So you always have some pillows and some props with you anyhow, right? So you guide your client into alpha state, like we do, with, going to the happy place, slowing the heartbeat down, letting go of the memories, coming into the now. And once in alpha state, you guide the client back to the time into the womb of the mother, to the moment when it was the right time to be born. So this is different to the work we did in regressions, where you are not suggesting. Here you're suggesting all the time. Because in this rebirthing situation, you are guiding your client through an event he yet not had. Because what you want to do is you want to override the subconscious memory of the wrong birth or the problematic birth with a right birth. Yeah? So everything can fall into place. That's what's missing. And because this is missing, you have to guide the client step by step through this process. So you guide the client back to the moment in the womb of the mother, to the time when it was the right time to be born, and that is the 40 weeks. So what you say is to your client, you feel yourself in the womb of your mother, and it is now the right time to be born. That's all you say. You don't need to mention 40 weeks. Yeah. Then you guide the client through the whole birth process. And if you're not having given birth to an actual child yet, just watch some videos how that looks like. So you have, you have a visual, because it's very important that you visualize every process, every step by step of a natural birth, so you can guide your client through it with confidence. Because he's an alpha state. She's obviously she's an no, it could be he as well. We're talking about the child here in alpha state, and susceptible to suggestions. So you should know what you're talking about, and only use correct terms, and know exactly the step of a natural birth that you have in front of your inner eye when you guide your client through it. So what is the step? The first step is, from the perspective of the baby, is that it runs out of space. In the natural birth, 40 weeks after conception, the baby has grown to a size that is completely taking the whole size of the womb. There is barely any space for water, and this is also the time when the water breaks. So you are guiding the client to this feeling when the water has been broken, so it's dry, it's not liquid anymore, and there is no space anymore to grow. It's absolute, or to move even, right? And also the client also feels like already head down. So the feels are, you guide the client to feel the head pressing against the cervix. Yeah. This is why you need to know how a birth looks like. So you can actually do that. Then you are encouraging you are really making it vital to him. You're really creating this picture so he's completely in it. How he feels that the walls are coming closer and he's running out of space, and although he doesn't want to let go, he has to let go of the mother. He has to get out. It is like dying for the baby. The baby thinks it's gonna die. It's gonna squeeze you know, and that's the end of it, right? But no, it's not, because the head pressing against the cervix is opening it up to 10 centimeters. That's when the birth is ready. And that is where the head can go through. And that is what you guide the client to feel, how he slips the head through the cervix and all of a sudden understands that there is actually a way out. And then there's actually a life after. Because this is the first trauma for a baby, if you will, is this being squeezed in the womb, right? Having, you know, the sensation of being suffocated by the contraction. Until the baby understands, oh my gosh, I can get out. There is a way out. So you make it really visible for the client, so they can really go into it and feel it. And then you encourage the client to press with the feet against the womb. This is the action to release energies, to press against the womb. And they might even start to do that. And that is now where you come in and you are suggesting that while holding the client really tight. So everything you suggest, you're actually doing. That's the good thing if you're not virtually. So how does it look is that you get the client to stand up because you need to be behind him, so not sitting anymore. The client stands up, you're behind him, and you are grabbing at the shoulder, your own arms, and squeeze, right? So the client has the shoulders in, so like a baby, like the hands in, and you're squeezing and squeezing and squeezing, and you want them to fall forward. This is the head down movement, yeah? So you know that you are on the right way when the client starts to fall forwards, head forward into your arm or out of your arms, actually, right? And you need to be prepared, especially when the client is heavier, that you have a good stand and that you have all the, you know, the soft pillows and everything around you, because now is the time when he goes head first to go with him or her on the floor. Still holding on really, really tight. So tight that, you know, you don't need to worry about them. You don't break ribs or anything, but it will be so tight, like you would normally not touch anybody. Right? It is much tighter than you think. And this is good if you can practice that with a friend. Yeah. It is so tight that it's very uncomfortable. It is like in the womb. You need to go out. Now you are kind of going down on the floor with your client, head first, still holding on, and then you encourage your client to wiggle through your arms as if it would be the birth canal. So using the feet pressing against you, you are the mother. You are representing the mother, like in a family constellation. And you encourage the baby to go through it. And you say something like, you're doing well, great job, press harder, you get out there, you know, you encourage this whole process verbally to happen in a natural way without any experiences of difficulties, because this is what you override with this rebirthing. You override the memory of any kind of difficulties and traumatic, like, you know, you have umbilical cords around necks and all these kinds of births, which are all traumatic. And of course, in the rebirthing that you are guiding, this is not happening. It's a normal birth, right, with no problems. So you encourage the client to struggle out, you still hold tight, really, really tight, but now he wiggles out, so you know you're not holding the shoulders anymore, the arms, you're holding the hips and then the legs until they come to the feet, and you still hold really, really tight also the feet, right? So they can release all the birth energies while going through this imaginary birth canal. And then when they are born, you take them on your lap like a mother would do. Of course, you don't present your breast, please, but you will say, good girl, good boy, you done well. You will put the blanket around to keep it warm, yeah. and you would say, now you are representing the mother, so you would say something like, finally you are here. I have waited for you so long. I'm so happy that you are here. You know, like a normal mother would react. You use these words, right? And then this can take like 40-50 minutes. Like that's possible. So there's nothing to rush here. And then give enough time to rest. And you representing the mother, so there is no room for a PPD or an interrupted movement. And then, as always, like in a family constellation, when the client shows a sign of relief, a sigh or something like that, or is really relaxed, then you can help your client out of alpha state and back into the room where you are with him, with her. So that's the process of rebirthing. And it's really, really, really important that you use your body and your voice to guide the client through that. This is not the time to ask the client how they feel. Because you know how they feel. They feel like every baby feels, terrified, exhausted, and happy at the end. That's how they feel. So very, very important is, of course, you make sure they cannot harm themselves when they fall down. And also be aware they might want to, so when you hold them like this before you go to the floor, you want them to fall forward, but they might want to slip down through your arms. Yeah, that is not a rebirthing. You have to start again if that happens. So if you feel they want to slip, instead of falling forward, slip through your hands down, you have to hold it more tight to net. Yeah, and force more pressure, so force them to decide to go forward, because that is how the baby is igniting its own birth, you know, by putting the head through the cervix into the birth canal. They have to do that. So what else can I tell you about rebirthing? Let's see what's on this chart. So the client should be encouraged to release their birth energy through screaming, crying, heavy breathing, coughing even, whatever they want to do, really. That's really, really good if they want to use any of these things to release birth energies as well. And you, representing the mother, always praise, always positive, always encouraging, always staying in the present, of course, yeah, and always treating your client like it's a newborn. So if you don't want to be too close to your client, you can also, instead of holding him in your lap, let them hug a big cushion. But keep praising. You're still representing the mother. Hold your hands on him or her, right? Make sure that you are in the field. This is a case where you can easily guide and represent at the same time. And actually, Bert Hellinger has done something similar very often. Yeah, you see that. I don't know even if there's a video, but I saw it a lot in the workshops that he was actually going through the rebirthing with the client without knowing it's. He never named it a rebirthing. No, but exactly this I saw him doing. Yeah. And he said oft that he's often representing the mother for their client, for his client. And then you need a closing, no, to get your client back into the real world, if you will, by like in a meditation or regression, take him out of alpha state, making sure he feels grounded. making sure they feel the weight of their body, they feel the earth under their feet, and they are able to open eyes. Hmm. Okay. We see if we have time by the end today or maybe tomorrow. If we want, I may make a demonstration. Other than that, you can definitely see that in one of the practice workshops, because I'm sure, excuse me, I'm sure it will come up. So somebody wants a rebirth, or a rebirth is needed. So there was a lot of information anyhow now. So I would like now to proceed to the interrupted movement towards the mother. We have talked about that a lot. You have seen it already a lot. You have done it already a lot, and there's still a lot to discover. So let's go back to square one. What is interrupted movement towards the mother? The interrupted movement towards the mother is the inability of the child to reach out to the mother when the child thinks it needs the mother for survival. It happens from being born, or in the womb of the mother sometimes, to up about 5 years. Mostly between newborn and 2 years old. That doesn't mean it cannot be later. I have seen cases of a 10-year-old, but it is rare. Don't need to look for it. When it happens, it happens. It mostly happens in children up to 5 years, or when your client was up to 5 years. When does it occur, interrupted movement? Most commonly are interrupted movements at or shortly after the birth, and has often to do with medical treatments. That the baby is taken away for medical treatment, or the mother was injured during birth, had to go into hospital. A lot of times, well, in former times, I don't know whether it's still the case, they didn't stay together. They would, either the child was treated in the hospital or the mother treated in the hospital, and then another caregiver was looking after mother or child. So that is often a case of interrupted movement towards the mother of the child in early childhood. Other than that, like a 2-year-old child can be without the mother for some time because the mother needs to go for work somewhere else, or like a few days or weeks even, or needs to go to the hospital, or the child needs to go to the hospital and is alone, and the mother can't come because they either don't provide that at the hospital, or the mother has to work, or whatever, right? There are so many situations, and none of them is intended, right? It is absolutely possible and normal that everyone is going through an interrupted movement towards the mother. It is not the exception. It's a norm. So that's the most often how. And of course, when the mother dies, when she gives birth, that is the biggest interrupted movement towards the mother. The signs of an interrupted movement towards the mother is the child cannot look at the mother in a family constellation, or the client is saying he or she has not a good relationship to the mother. They come with all kinds of explanations why. So don't buy into the story. I intend not to listen to it anymore anyhow. Because it's just the mind trying to find a reason why somebody is rejecting the mother, while in fact it's just an interrupted movement. So for your work, it is absolutely unimportant what the client thinks, why they dismiss the mother. That's their thing. But for your work, okay, here is a movement towards the mother needed. That's a sign. The sign is to speaking about the mother not nicely. The sign is also to find excuses for the mother why she wasn't there. Yeah, so that's probably the most common signs when when a client has an interrupted movement towards the mother as a child. And then, of course, we have also the repetitive pattern in family systems, which you look at as well. What do you do when you feel or see or know that a client has an interrupted movement towards the mother? Now we are thinking of at the moment to be in a workshop situation, right? You have your client on your right sitting, and you are talking, and it comes up, and you realize, okay, this client has an interrupted movement towards the mother. Obviously, you want a representative for him or her and the mother, first of all. That's how you start. Easy. Two people, two person. The client, you always ask the client if they want to represent themselves, because in this interrupted movement towards the mother, it is extremely helpful if the client does the work and not a representative. But it's choice, as always in life. If they say, no, I want somebody to represent me, that's fine. Especially for the first time that the client does anything like that, because it is most likely not the last time that they have an interrupted movement towards the mother constellation. And the second time, maybe they are ready to do it themselves. Most often, this only comes to an end until the client really does it themselves. And the work before from representatives is all just, shedding layers and layers. Of course, it helps, but often when the client does the work him or herself, then it is a breakthrough. Also, sometimes I suggest to the client that I let the representative start to represent the client, and then when the client has, overcome this distance in a certain extent, I ask the client if they want to swap and take over their own representation to make it more impactful for them. And another sign, by the way, is when you have already the client represented in a family constellation, so you have client and mother standing there. Another sign for an interrupted movement towards the mother is that the representative of the client doesn't want to move towards the mother. As you suggest to a child standing, across from the mother, would you like to go to your mother? And then they say no. Then you know. Because a child that doesn't have an interrupted movement towards the mother would love to go to the mother. Yeah. It would actually run towards the mother. But that is not the case when there's an interrupted movement. So that's a clear sign that that is needed. So what to do? So the stages are to start with the word please. That's always the first thing. Start with please. Maybe the client can't even say that. Then, when the client can't say please, you suggest him to go on the knees. Make themselves small. Try again, please. If the client still cannot say please, make them lie on the belly, facing the mother. Ask them to say please. I have not yet seen anybody who is not saying please in this position. But it might happen. If this happens, you might have to break it up. But be assured that the movement already has taken place, like the movement needed. It's just not come to a completion yet. That's fine. Next time. So let's assume at any stage of this making themselves smaller, they are able to say please. Then you would suggest to say, please, mom, please, please, please. Really let it come from the heart. Say, I need you. I need you to nourish me. I need you to care, because the signs of an interrupted movement is also arrogancy in the child. It's not only dismissal of the mother, it's also arrogancy towards the mother. Like, you are not a good mother. That's the hurt child speaking, yeah? Because all the child is saying, you were not there when I needed you. In the subconscious mind, of course, it isn't conscious because it was too small, the child. So now you allow the child to express that, what the child couldn't express at the moment of the interrupted movement. Please, I need you, please. And now it's often the time when the representative of the mother wants to move towards the child, and you have to stop that. Because the movement has to come from the child, not the mother. Claudia?
Just a question, can there actually be more than one interrupted movement towards the mother? More occasion where it happens? So
Yes, but it's
Yeah.
all healed in one movement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Or in repetition of this one movement. It's not the movement at the time of the interrupted movement towards the mother, you know. So with one movement towards the mother, you heal all incidents when it comes, but it doesn't mean that you only need one movement. You can need, several sessions to that the movement is really coming to a completion. Then the child, hopefully small enough, able to say please, please, please. These words coming from the child, supposed to move the child towards the mother. So stop the mother from moving towards the child. If she has already stepped forward, ask her to step back to where she was. She can open the arms, she can invite the child in, but she cannot move. So that it is the effort of the child to go to the mother. Otherwise, it is not healing the wound. So now the movement, this natural movement towards the mother, which the baby has since the moment of birth energy is released. Yeah. It has the urge to let go of the mother in the womb, and coming out of the birth canal, it has the urge to go towards the nourishment of the mother, to get the colostrum, to get the milk, to get the warmth and the protection of the mother. And you can see that in babies, that they actually, although they are little things that barely are able to move, with their little stubby feet and arms, they crawl a couple of centimeters towards the breast. And that is beautiful, and that is meant to be. Because if they plop out, let's say cesarean section, they are plop out of the womb of the mother without any effort, and then plonked onto the breast of the mother, no effort needed. Yeah, they right away have not to engage to get what they need at all, right? So you can see right here what kind of adults that's producing these modern medicine behavior, right? So yes, Julie.
Maya, I was just going to say, I did a course once and it was all about how that's really important for the brain development as well. It's the same with a child if they miss that crawling to walking and just go straight from sitting to walking. So it doesn't, get certain parts of their brain and their neonatal reflexes. So it's really, affects
Interesting.
long term. Yeah.
Yeah, because of course the neural net is forming the whole time. After they are born, so all of these informations are important for later, right?
Yeah, that's right. And that first movement is so important, the one from getting to the breast.
Yeah, exactly. So in an ideal world, you would have this natural birth, the midwife would deliver the baby, put it on the belly of the mother and let it there, only covered, like complete in blood and everything, doesn't matter. Cover with a blanket, and then let it, move this couple of centimeters towards the breast. That would be ideal. So When this not happened, or when another interrupted movement happened, right? You are in the stage where you are guiding the representative of the client to move towards the mother. Now we don't suggest that, we don't make them, but we ask them if they can. We ask them, can you move? And if they can't move, they have to say, more please, I need you, more of that. Or be smaller, 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 until they make one move. And often when the first move is made, it's easier the second, and then the third, and then all of a sudden they're already there. Now they hug the mother, not in eyesight, because normally the representatives are same size or something, or the child is taller than the mother. They are still babies, right? They are still under 5. So it is best to let them hug the legs of the mother to have the correct perspective. And then you guide both through opening the heart and let the energy, the love energy from mother to child flow. The love energy from mother in this case, in this demonstration, is there. It can also be interrupted. That's another case. We look at that another time. But let's assume the love is there from the mother. Then it is the child that has closed its heart. That's the interruption. It's not that the mother doesn't deliver love. It is that the child has closed the heart to receive it because it was hurt. And remember, the subconscious mind is there to avoid pain. So the subconscious mind is giving the information, don't try to go to your mother anymore. You get hurt. She's not there. So the child and the adult doesn't try to get to the mother anymore. So that is the problem, not that the mother has no love. The mother's love can also flow when she lives on another continent. She doesn't need to be there. Because if she would have been needed to bring up the child and she wasn't there, the child wouldn't be alive, obviously. So you wouldn't have a client to work with. So the sheer fact that you have a client to work with is proof that the mother was there to provide, either in person or through others, right? And the mother's love is energetically always there. If she herself hasn't had an interrupted movement, that's another case. So now it's up to the child to overcome the suggestion of the subconscious mind to not to go to her, to avoid pain, and open the heart. Go to her, open the heart, and receive the love so it can flow again. That's what you are guiding in your work. So you would use words like, keep your heart open, breathe in the love of your mother, let it reach your heart, keep on breathing, breathe all the love of the mother in. That's, how you guide. You guide the child. You don't need to guide the mother. The mother is naturally giving love as she would give naturally breast milk. Okay, and then you can, if you see the process is made, then you can ask the client to stand up and hug the mother, being a little bit taller, but always make sure the arms are under the arms of the mother. The mother's arms are on top because she is always the bigger one. And if you have a very stubborn child, very arrogant, that doesn't open the heart even to say, please, please, I need you, or that doesn't want it, then you can just say, I'm the little one, you are the big one, because that's truth. Or if they cannot even say that because they feel bigger, some they say, I can't say that I feel bigger than the mother, then you suggest to say, you came first, I came after, where there is no arguing about that. That is a fact. So no one can deny this fact. So that's where you start. Basic acknowledging what is. The mother came first, I came later. And then you can suggest, and you are bigger and I'm smaller. And you are older and I'm younger. Just find these things that are obvious true. And once this arrogant child can say the obvious true things, it also can start to say the things that comes from the heart. So that's the guidance that you are offering when you facilitate an interrupted movement towards the mother. And when everything is solved and the client or representative of the client has been able to soak up all the love from the mother, then the closing can be a thank you, but that's not necessary. You can suggest thank you to go on in a constellation, because sometimes the interrupted movement is just a step in the context of a constellation. In order to move on, for example, the client towards their children, that is a good idea to suggest to say thank you, to make the step away from the mother again and turn around and face the own children. But just because one has said thank you to the mother doesn't mean that that was the last movement towards the mother they ever have to do. This is something that sometimes needs repetition. Okay. What about the father? Yes, there's of course also interrupted movements towards the father. They normally don't have to do with the birth, obviously, because that's where the father is not needed. They normally come later. They normally more come to a child that is 3, 4, 5 years old, maybe 6, 7 even. And it's just a matter of how intense was the relationship with the father. Did the father was kind of a little bit replacement of the mother? You know, was this the main caretaker? Was you see, there can be interrupted movement towards the father, definitely. Yes, Claudia.
What happens actually when the father is not in the picture at all?
I cannot say that there's always an interrupted movement towards the father just because the father wasn't there.
Okay.
But that's not what I see.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, so I would not draw any conclusions out of this fact, but in a family constellation you will see it. You see it when the child has resentments towards their father, represented by somebody. Then you know, aha, there might be. Often, when the father is not in the picture in this family, the child never had developed this desire, and so could not be traumatized by the father not being there. It is much more difficult when the father was present and then probably went when the child was 4 or 5, no, without a trace or something like that. That definitely, I would say, will cause an interrupted movement towards the father. The steps are exactly the same, only that normally I don't suggest them to say, I need your nourishment. I rather suggest to say, I need your care, I need your security, I need your, you know, what, like the manly part of the family. What would, you know, what they provide normally. But you see, whatever you pick, it doesn't matter as long as there's a please. Whatever resonates with the client is okay. I mean, you don't need to choose different words towards the mother if they help, if they work. That's fine. Whatever works, as long as it goes with please. And then it's exactly the same step, nothing different to the mother. So here's the definition, or not the definition, the background informal definition when interrupted movement towards the mother occur. Every child is drawn towards their mother in search of nourishment, care, love, and protection. Without this instinctive energies, the child wouldn't be able to secure its life. That's a fact. That is like with every being. Maybe not with fish, I'm not sure about that. But every mammal, let's say that, has been known to that the children need the mother at least for a short period of time. If the child is separated from its mother within the crucial first years of its life, this forward movement, this instinctive forward, comes to an abrupt halt. The child is traumatized, meaning afraid of dying, perceived or unreal, and loses trust in the mother to be able to protect it and nourish it. But the energy is still there to move towards the mother. It's like the birth energy is still there in a short birth to let go of the mother. The child wants to go to the mother, but it feels it can't do it to not feel the pain again. That's the background of an interrupted movement towards the mother, or the father for that matter. So we talked about when it occurs, accident, illness of child or mothers, or any kind of these situations. We talked about all that. Mother can leave also the family. Like some mothers, they leave the family when the children are young. Of course, that causes a very interrupted movement. And then of course the mother has a postpartum depression, right? Is emotionally unable to look after the child. Boom, here you go. You have an interrupted movement towards the mother in the child. What else comes? So what is the interrupted movement towards the mother not? It is not complaining about what the mother did or didn't do. That's not an interrupted movement. Like, oh, my mother, she never gave me enough, I don't know, cookies in my lunchbox, and I was harassed or bullied in primary school about that, or something, things like that. That's not an interrupted movement. The mother can do whatever she wants, right? It's not the child's decision to choose a particular behavior in the mother. So all this complaining doesn't say anything until we see the representatives of the client facing the mother and not wanting to go there. Then you see an interrupted movement. So when the client starts to complain about the mother, you can just shush the client and say, we look at it. Yeah. And just make a quick check-in with two representatives. What's going on? Before you spend 10 minutes letting the client complain about their mother, which also has a very low energy and is not good for the workshop neither. Okay. So the signs for an interrupted movement towards the mother in the child are, so now I'm talking about children, not adults that are clients, but if you look at the children, to see if there could be a potential interrupted movement towards the mother. Hypoactive children, right? They cannot get their energy from the mother due to an interrupted movement. So they are always in this state of need of doing stuff and having and getting this energy going. Yeah. Maybe I just think about it. HDAL. What is it called again?
ADHD.
Thank you. ADHD maybe is nothing else an interrupted movement towards the mother. So if you have a case in your family, if one of your child is diagnosed HDAD, feel free to bring it up in a practice workshop. Alessandra?
Yes, now I have a question. I am in some family constellations facilitators says that you can't constellate for your adult children. Is it all right?
You can't what?
You can't constellate for your on behalf of adult children.
Yes and no. Yes. So I agree. If your child is like 35, they should come to a constellation if they want help. It's you as a mother are kind of not in the picture anymore to help them, right? But if a child is 8 years or 18 years old, I wouldn't make a big difference there. It's not just because they become 18 you can't constellate anymore. It's more, where in life they are. if they still live at home and you're still providing for them, or they are going to uni and they still come home, they're still your children and you're still looking after them. So you can also look spiritually after them, right? But if they decided they want their own life and they are responsible for themselves and they don't want their mother to do stuff for them anymore, including washing their clothes and whatever, or cooking, then they should also take over responsibility for this. Yeah, I agree. The disregard of the mother, other than just complaining about what she did or not did, right? That's obviously the sign. This talking negative about the mother, other than just complaining about what she did. Can't let go of the mother either. It's also a sign of an interrupted movement, because there is this don't want to go to the mother, but still needing the mother going on. Yeah? And that is felt in the client or in the child who was in the situation. That is so people who have no contact with the mother, and there's often something else going on. No? So people who like some children who decide to never you know, talk to their mother again. Or I actually know a case. I have a friend, she had a son and she had that. You too, Claudia? So there's something other. I would say there's definitely look somewhere else as well. Of course, you can consider a interrupted movement, which might be also present, but there would be also another entanglement present. I would look for.
Yeah, I didn't talk to my mother for 20 years. And I never talked to her until she died. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you had a child that has passed away already?
No, I have not talked to my mother for 20
your mother.
years.
Okay.
Yeah. And never talked to her again until she died. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So as we know, in a family constellation, the child cannot go towards the mother, but wants the mother to come to them. Of course, they always want that, but that's exactly the sign, and that you cannot allow that happen. And angry towards the mother is of course the sign of interrupted movement towards the mother. And also a sign is that people who can't stay in relationships often, the source is often interrupted movement towards the mother, right? This rejection, this wanting the partner, but also rejecting the partner is just a replacement for the mother relationship. So I think I went through all of that. Let me just quickly look that up. When you watch the video recordings, of course, you can slow that down and read it all again. So when you have this whole, so we were just talking about a workshop situation here, but if you have it either remotely or in a one-on-one session situation, yeah, this interrupted movement towards the mother, and you have no representative, right, for the mother or the child. You can use figurines, of course, but you can also make a regression into childhood, you know, and make the movement like in the child. It is a childhood trauma. So you can also in a one-on-one situation treat it as a childhood trauma. Make a regression, you go back to where it was, and then you let the movement come to an end, to fulfillment. Instead of hugging the mother, the client hugs a pillow, or a big soft toy, something. In this case, I would not suggest in one-on-one session that you are representing the mother. You know, that is not a rebirthing situation. It is not necessary. And if it's not necessary, you better stay neutral as a facilitator. In a rebirthing, it's necessary, but not in an interrupted movement. No? The pillow is fine. So let's see, what if the mother cannot face or look at the child? Now we know this interrupted movement is systemic, because the mother herself has also an interrupted movement. that make her unable to receive the love of her mother, so she has nothing to give to her child. Yeah. So what we do is we place one mother after the other and see where the interrupted movement started. Meaning we find that mother in this line of mothers up to 7 generations who looks with love at her child. This is where you know there is love, love that flows. And there's the first interrupted movement because her child is unable to receive the love. And this is where you start. You start from the back. So you start there. You perform the interrupted movement towards the mother, and when that is cleared, then you turn this mother around, and now you see she's available for the child. And then this next child does interrupted movement until fulfillment, turns around and becomes a mother and is now ready to, So that's beautiful. You see that all the time. This is beautiful how this is like has this ripple effect. Right? That is what we talked about. Then, if this doesn't work, because you can't find in 7 generations, where this is originated, then you might look for an entanglement in the family of the mother. Because there might be an entanglement that it's not an interrupted movement, not a trauma in this case. Yeah. So you're performing a normal family constellation in the line in the family system of the mother. And see what you find. And of course, the mother might has not released trapped birth energies from her birth when she cannot look at her child. Right? There's this letting go of the child still going on. Right? Which is then, in a family constellation situation, you could, I actually have never done it, but that would be fun. You could suggest the representative of the mother to perform a rebirthing. Who knows? Maybe that works. Yeah. When the child is not willing to move towards the mother, you try all mothers, right? As above, and see if there's anything that helps. And sometimes it helps if the client sees not only his mother, but all the mothers before. Standing there, providing the love. So the child realizes it's not personal. It's not mother's love. It's the love of all mothers that is flowing through the mothers. It comes from the source of love. It's not created by any particular person that he might dislike. That's not the point, Some they reject because they don't like the mother for some reason, because they think she does something evil or something, or they maybe have good reasons because she was abusive or whatnot, right? So they dislike the mother on a personal level. They can't overcome that, so they can't open their heart to the love of the mother. Then it helps to see that it is not the mother's love. She hasn't created it. It's not evil love. It's the love of all the mothers before that is just flowing through her, like a conduit. And that does help in these situations. The last resort is that you asked, this looks a little bit religious, but it really helps. And remember, Bert Hellinger was a Catholic priest, so for him it was kind of natural to perform that. to let the client lie down on the belly, head down, arms, like lying before the altar of Jesus or something, and be completely humble, like being completely humble and as small as they can be. And sometimes also it helps if they you suggest the palms up in front of the mother, like it's like the please begging for the mother's love. It's a gesture, but this is moving the soul, right? If they cannot say please, you would just ask them to lie in this position, and this please is enabled. This is the beauty about gestures. It enables these movements. So always let them say not only please mom, please, Just let them repeat it. Repeat it. It comes more from the heart as more often they say it. You can also suggest a rebirthing, maybe in a one-on-one situation, maybe not in the workshop. You know, whatever feels right. If you have already tried a lot with a client, you might don't want to extend it. Suggest a rebirthing in another situation. And if this, the child is a boy, it might be entangled with the father who is angry towards his wife, right? So the anger towards the mother can sometimes be somebody else's, the father's anger. So if an interrupted movement doesn't quite work or the signs doesn't quite add up, then if you place a father with then you might see the whole picture. And then the child is saying to the father, rather I be angry to my mother than you. And as always, when nothing works, don't worry, you just break it up. Some sort of movement will have taken place, and the movement goes beyond the session, up to half a year. You can trust it, and that was all that was in this situation enabled for the client. And that is more than enough. It's good enough. Yeah. Don't try too hard. You can also set yourself a time limit. I think that's a brilliant idea. If you say, as a beginner, you would probably give yourself 45 minutes or 50 minutes or 60 minutes for a constellation, yeah, but not more. So you have a clock and you watch the clock, and if you work with a client in a constellation and you're exceeding your limit, whatever you set it at, you just break it up. Because at one point you have to stop it anyhow. So, same procedure with the father, happens less often, because obviously the child can normally survive without the father, but not without the mother in young years. And there's no instinct energies built up towards the father. This is not happening. So you don't need to look there, right? Okay, here is, oh, hang on. I have a video for you, which is which shows an interrupted movement towards the mother from a workshop, and I'm gonna share it with you. It's not very long. Unfortunately, it didn't record. It didn't record the names, so I tell you who's who. The child is the Asian girl at the bottom. The mother is the woman above her with the glasses, yeah. And I don't quite remember who the father was. I think probably we see who the father was also there somewhere in the picture. So I just cut out the piece where it does show how we work with it. Sarah?
Can't see her.
Can you hear clearly? Sarah, what has changed when your parents came?
I feel like I'm being left out somehow.
You don't feel connection?
I'm a bit scared of my dad.
Yeah.
I can see cares from my mom, but I feel like I'm left out.
Mariella, was there something in the early childhood of your daughter that she was separated from you? Oh, sorry, she was the mother, not the one with the glasses.
Only for a couple of days when she was born, and I went home immediately with her, like on the
No, she's a
same day
representative
from the
of
hospital.
sorry.
I
Mariella is a
had my
client.
parents,
No.
and I felt I had support at home. And but then 4 days later, we had to go back into hospital, and she had to stay there because she was, what's the term in English? She was suffering a little bit of yellowish ectostomy. What's the term? Anyway, it's a condition that sometimes affects certain babies when they don't receive enough sunlight. In fact, Ivan had it, and I had it slightly, but with the sunlight, it was enough for us. In Amber's case, she needed to be under the lamp.
Yeah, that's what we have here. We have an interrupted movement towards the mother. So you look at the Asian girl, how she looks, eh? Sarah. Like with this, look at Nam Shakti, look at your fear and resentment towards the mother. Can you go towards her mom? Doesn't look like it. No. Say to your mom, Sarah, please. Please, mom.
Please, Mom.
Very good. Please, mom, I need you.
Please, Mom, I need you.
Look how hard it is. I'm lost without you.
I'm lost without you.
Want to hug her.
But she needs to come first. I'm shocked. She's not there. She's the mother. Yeah.
I can see her now, though. I couldn't see her before, but I can see her now.
Look
when
at
she said
her.
that to me.
Look at her and say, I'm here.
I'm here.
I'm always here for you.
I'm always here for you.
Always.
Always.
Let's sit down. Nice breathing. Sarah, look at your. Can you look at her? Can you look at Namsha? Can you see her? Can you go towards her a few steps?
A few small steps.
Very good.
So now
Just
she can
go
walk
as far
just
as
by
you
saying
can.
please, right?
How much distance is still there?
I think I'm originally like 10 steps away. Right
10
now,
steps?
it's seven
Okay.
steps.
Very good. Very good. Just stay there. Look at your mom and say again, please, mom.
Please, Mom.
I am afraid to die without you.
I'm afraid to die without you.
I need you.
I need you.
I need your love, your nourishment, and your care.
I need your love, your nourishment, and your care.
To survive.
To survive.
Yeah. Deep breathing. Peter, I'm so little.
I'm just a little.
Yeah. And all I want to do is go to you.
All I want to do is go to you.
And get the nourishment and care I need.
And get the nourishment and care I need from you.
Now see how much closer you can go now.
A few more steps.
How
So
far
you
away
see,
are you
it's a
now?
slow process, right?
3, 4 steps away.
Very good. Then see how you go on your knees. Yeah, you are very small. You look up to her, right? She's very tall. Say again, please, Mom.
Please, Mom.
I need you.
I need you.
Very good. Please let me in.
Please let me in.
And on your knees, you crawl towards her legs. Can you do that?
Not for now.
How far away are you?
I'm not sure.
Then you see yourself lying on the belly, and maybe
See,
the
there's
distance between you and the mother is just the length of your body. And see if your hands can reach her feet. Now this is the ultimate position, remember? You cannot
if
see them,
nothing
but you can
moves
feel them.
anymore.
Can you?
Yes. I can feel
Very
them.
good. You feel them, very good. Very good. So you hold on to her ankle with strong little fingers. Yeah. And then you pull yourself closer to her. Deep breathing. Saying, please, Mom.
I'm trying, but the hands are shaking so much.
Yeah. That's good. Then stay there. Just breathe and let the mother's love flow from her through her feet into your hand. Just slowly, just a little bit. From your hands, you feel her love flow through your arms, through your shoulders, down your spine, into your heart. Yes. And now you pull your arms again. Pull yourself closer to your mother. Yes. Very good. Until you can hug her leg. When you have a pillow, grab the pillow and hug her leg. And deep breathing. Breathe all the mother's love in. All the nourishment and care flowing uninterrupted. Breathe in through your mouth big inhale and big exhale. Very good. Yes, very good. You're a good girl. Yes, you're doing well. Doing very, very. And breathe. And crawl a little bit higher up so you can hug her waist. Yeah? And press your face against her chest. Mm. And now, Shakti, you can hug her. Yeah. And let all the love flow. That's it. Very good. Very. And now you, Sarah, can pull yourself up a little bit higher so that you're standing. Yeah? And give her another hug. That's it. And then you say to your mom, thank you. You- that's it.
Thank you for being there for me.
So that is astounding that she said that, eh? After and now I take all your love. Think of the 10 minutes before. Now I can take all your love as it is.
Now I can take all your love as it is.
Yeah. And it is more than enough for me.
And it is more than enough for me
To secure my life.
to secure my life.
And nourish me. Take your time.
I feel like I'm yet ready to say it out.
Good. Well, you have come a long way. Very long way. We leave it there. Hmm? Yeah? Hmm? Yeah? Oh, that was oh, hang on. Where is it? No. Where is it playing? Can't find it. Can you hear that? The back. Okay, let me find it. Okay. So here we go. So that was a very typical interrupted movement towards the mother. All the steps you could see that I have explained to you. It can take a long time. This was not even long. It was about 15 minutes. But it was for the child represented a long way. Right? It was really hard, really hard. And it wasn't the child. It was the representative. Really hard to do that. but success is ensured if you go step by step, very slowly, acknowledge every step, don't, you know, rush it, and go, yeah, with everything. So before we come to an end, is there any questions regarding that we want to discuss now, or do we want to discuss it at the beginning of tomorrow's class, maybe, because it's late? Shall we do that? Yes. Okay. Very good. So I see you tomorrow. Have a good night. Have a lovely day
See you
back in
tomorrow.
India.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye. Good
everyone.
night.
Nice night.
Bye.
Bye.
Tomorrow.